Welcome to Sales Players, the #1 podcast for top players in B2B sales.
Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out in the world of sales, this is the show for you.
We're all about bringing you fresh, actionable ideas to supercharge your rev gen game.
We dive deep into the mindset, habits, and tools used by top performers in the industry. Generate more leads, close more deals, and build wealth and financial security in B2B sales.
So if you're ready to level up, you've come to the right place. Join the conversation with other like-minded sales players and continue the discussion beyond the show.
Hit the subscribe button, tune into the Sales Players, and let's start winning together.
Okay, tell me if this sounds like you. You're a sales hunter with literally hundreds of target accounts in your territory and no idea who in your patch is even in the market for your solution. You've pulled all the reports, built all the lists, and you've done a bunch of account research, but you're still in the dark about where to find your low-hanging fruit. And look, you could waste another quarter smiling and dialing, grinding through a cold list, and blasting out emails, or you could do what I do and get Leadfeeder. Leadfeeder identifies the companies that visit your company's website and tracks on-site activity so you can see which leads from your region are ready to buy right now. Leadfeeder has customizable notifications, lead scoring, routing, and it works seamlessly with your CRM system. Right now, Sales Players has got the hookup on an extended 21-day free trial offer, so be sure to use the link in the show notes to sign up. Oh, and you should probably forward that link over to your ops team so they can get Leadfeeder set up for your whole team. Stop burning time and resources on leads that don't convert and sign up for Leadfeeder.
Today we have a very special guest, and we have Phil Putnam, and he's going to be talking not only about pizza, but we're going to be talking about desire. So let's get into it.
Well, I mean, they're one and the same for me. So we ended up, we were talking about pizza because Chase and I were talking about it in the lead up to pressing the record button. And pizza is both a big part of our personal stories. More just me for personally, you more professionally. But,
well,
yeah.
it's personal. But I totally messed up. I didn't hit the record button, and Phil was going off on just really talking about his upcoming book and really desire. So we're going to get right back into it. So Phil, just give us a little bit more about your upcoming book and desire and how companies and leadership can use your tactics.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, so my book is called Desire-Based Leadership. It's a manager's unexpected key for driving top performance. And it came out on October 15th. So it's available to buy now if you want. But it really is just an expression of a lot of things for me, of my fascination and expertise with motivating performance, particularly from revenue organizations, which is where I've spent the vast majority of my career. And also my love of just wanting to increase people's peace of mind. That's really the core of my life mission. And because most adult humans spend the majority of their waking hours on work more than on any other adult activity, I prefer to try to increase people's peace of mind in the context of their careers because it's such a dominant element of most people's lives. And motivation for me matters so much because it, first of all, is the pathway to great business results that every company needs. So there's a strong business reason for it. And then also that performance, it's locked up in your people, right? You have to be able as a leader and as an organization to be able to get that performance at better and better levels out of your people. And so that's why motivation matters. And what I saw throughout my own career, many years as an individual contributor, and then several years as a leader and then an executive leader, I saw that most companies' approach to motivation really didn't line up with what motivates people to work in the first place. And so I developed a methodology as a people leader that really was based on the truth that the #1 career goal for everybody is to get the life they want in exchange for the work they do. This is just a human truth, right? No matter what type of work you do or how long you've been doing it, everyone's #1 career goal is to get the life they want in exchange for the work they do.
And Phil, this is the acronym that you're utilizing in the book. It's LIFE, correct? Is that?
Yeah, and I'll get into that in just a second, but that's definitely a big part of what the book shares with people. And what I'd found in my own experiences is that most leaders try to motivate employee performance on the basis of that employee's relationship to the company's success. And it sounds like this. It's when a leader says, hey, you matter here. Like, your work is so critical to us hitting our company goals. We can't do it without you. And that's why you should be motivated to develop your skills and work longer hours and have a longer tenure here at this company. Because when you succeed, we'll succeed and everybody will hit their goals. And the thing is, like, I have cared deeply about the success of every employer I've ever had, but I have never loved a company more than I love myself. And I have never cared more about a company's success than I care about getting the life I want from the work I do. And I've never found a single human who does. So when I got into people leadership, I had to very quickly figure out, how do I get the massive top level performance I need from my people to hit my mandate in a very short amount of time? A very typical, scenario that a lot of leaders find themselves in. And I just didn't have a lot of time to figure it out. So I just common sensed it. And I asked myself, what's the best way to get somebody to give me what I want? Well, it's to give them what they want. And so I thought, well, what do people want from their careers? They want to get the life they desire. And they care about that more than making their company successful. So rather than fight that human truth, I'm going to work from that. I'm going to use that as a basis. And so when I was interviewing people, and when I was, when I was getting to know any team members who I'd inherited when I came into a new organization, I would say, hey, let's just set aside work for a second. Just tell me about the life that you want to have. Talk to me about the components of that life experience. What are you trying to build for yourself and your loved ones in the next 2 to 3 years? And then I would analyze that. And I'd ask myself, can I give them this life experience in the reality within the current business constraints that we're in? Can I pay them what they need? Can I give them the flexibility that they want? Is there support for personal and professional well-being that lines up with what they're describing? And I realized that if I could give them that life experience, that's the ideal. Because then they're going to be fundamentally motivated to bring their top performance to work every day with a minimal amount of friction, because they believe that they can get the life they want from the job they have. I also realized that when the reverse was true and they couldn't or didn't believe that they could get the life that they wanted, they would disengage, their performance would start to dip. And if I couldn't correct it in time, they would eventually leave for an organization that could give them what they wanted. Yeah.
And what was that performance that you would say, where people are dipping? What are some key indicators that you want to just be on the lookout for to see if somebody is dipping or if they're excelling? Is it just quota attainment, or is it not quota attainment? Even a sales role, what are you looking for to see?
In sales, thankfully in sales, it's pretty easy because our metric structure is pretty well defined. And most organizations have tech in place that can quantify it to a pretty distinct level. So you're looking at your primary scorecard metrics, win rate, deal size, time, deal velocity, stuff like that. But I also look at the human aspects, right? I'm looking, is this person telling me things less often? Are they initiating conversation with me less often? Are they less focused or more focused? When we have our one-on-ones and I try to talk with them about things other than pipeline and other than deal review, are they engaged or not? So I'm looking at their overall disposition to their role as well as their metric performance. And I think it's important to call out that, motivation decreasing is not the only change. You could also see an increase in motivation among your people. And that is usually an indication that their belief that they can get the life they want from the job they have has increased, and therefore their motivation has increased. Because the truth about motivation that I really came to fully understand throughout this process, and that I'm so excited to share with people, is that motivation is an output of somebody's belief that they can get the life they want from the job they have. Motivation is not an output of a process or a tool. And, if you watch what happens, most leaders, when they experience or identify a decrease in their team members' motivation, the most common solution they pursue is operational. We need a new program. We need a new sales methodology. We need new processes. We need new tech. That is not going to make any difference.
Yep.
Not in a meaningful way, because all you're doing is further building out the infrastructure of an environment that is not motivating your people to perform.
Mm. Hey there, sales players. Today's episode is brought to you by our amazing new sponsor, Lemlist. Whether you're closing deals or nurturing leads, Lemlist is your all-in-one platform for personalization outreach that converts. Picture this. You craft a killer email campaign in minutes using Lemlist's intuitive drag-and-drop editor. Want to stand out? Lemlist is here to help with advanced personalization that lets you dynamically insert custom images, videos, and even personalized landing pages based on your persona. With Lemlist Analytics, you'll know exactly who opened, clicked, and replied to your emails. Join thousands of sales professionals who trust Lemlist to supercharge their outreach efforts. Use the link in the show notes below and start your free trial today. Your personalized outreach just got a whole lot easier. Happy selling.
Motivation is the result of a belief that somebody can get what they want from their current situation. And so if you're going to try to increase somebody's motivation, you have to increase the likelihood of them getting what they want. Sometimes you can do that, sometimes you can't, which means sometimes you get employee satisfaction and sometimes you get attrition. Yeah.
And, it's interesting. I'm taking a course right now, and it had me actually take a personality test, and I found out that I am an ENFJ-T, a protagonist.
Oh my gosh, I'm the same.
All right.
I'm literally the same.
Pizza lover, protagonist. We're on,
Yeah.
And you're in New York City. So talk to me about, I think that finding the right company and the right communication structure also is something for ICs and also team leaders to maybe you have somebody that is a protagonist, or maybe they're more insulated and they're not so gung-ho like we are.
Sure.
To help other folks. So talk to us about dealing with other personality types, and if you are not really one to always raise your hand or be vocal about what your needs are, or if you have team members that are not, and really how do you get that out of them?
Yeah, it's funny. As you're asking that question, I'm remembering there was a very specific day in my late 20s when I realized, oh my gosh, not everybody enjoys sharing their opinion. It was just like, because I can't shut up, right? I'm super mouthy, and I always have been, which is probably why I'm a teacher and a workshop leader, and an author. That's my special skill. But I was like, oh my gosh, some people don't like sharing their opinion. But what I've come to realize over the 20 some years since then, I'm now in my mid 40s, is that regardless of someone's personality, everybody wants something. Everybody has desire. And I think one of the important nuances of being a really effective people leader is to not make assumptions about somebody based upon their personality. It's not uncommon for the loudest people to get the most attention. We suck up the most oxygen in the room, but quiet people, they still have a life that they desire. They still have a massive amount of value to offer to their employers. And they will be just as touched and empowered, if not even more so, if you go to them and say, hey, I'm curious, I'm interested about the life that you're trying to build for yourself, and I honor the fact that that's why you work, and I want to help you get it if I can. So let's talk about that. Let's discover what you're trying to get, and I'll just be honest with you and tell you if you can get it here or if you might need to go somewhere else. That's sort of how the approach that I take and that I teach transcends personality. It also transcends industry and job family, because again, human desire is universal. And the desire to get the life we want from the work we do is universal as well.
And do you feel like this is what you're teaching and helping companies and employers with? Is this really more important with the remote culture lifestyle of work culture?
I think it's important no matter what sort of work location model any employer is working with. I do think it's particularly important, or of heightened importance, when you have a meaningful portion of millennial and Gen Z employees in your organization, and you have a primarily on-site work model. Now, I will just state my bias up front. If you want to come and complain about millennials and Gen Zers, do not sit by me. I love millennials and Gen Zers. I am fascinated by them. Myself, I'm like a very late edge Gen Xer. Like I'm right on the edge of Gen X and millennial. I'm currently 45, born in 79. But I think that there is so much power and so much value in millennials and Gen Zers. And also just straight up by the numbers, they are currently 53% of the global workforce by generation. And they will probably grow to around 65% by 2035, because Gen Zers right now are between ages 13 and 28. So about half of that generation has not yet aged into the adult workforce. So, for years, I've been surrounded by leaders and senior leaders who think it's fun and cool to openly insult millennials and Gen Zers. That's a huge liability for any business right now, because they are the dominant majority of the global workforce and the talent pool. So there is a vested financial and operational interest in understanding and accommodating what those generations respond best to when it comes to motivating their performance. And I go deep into this in the book as well.
And so, Phil, are you hearing from clients oh, these millennials on our staff are just not able to do what we needed them to do? Or what are the complaints that you're hearing from clients that you have to shift their mindset to be hey, you can't talk like that. Let's we got to get their buy-in.
Sure. Well, before COVID, it was primarily about millennials, because they were more in that. It was kind of the younger half of the millennial generation at the time. And so it was all those complaints about they're entitled and, they roll into work at 10 a.m. and they don't work hard and they've participation trophy and all that bullshit. And then post-COVID, it transitioned a little bit more towards applying those same ideas to Gen Z. A big reason why it's less popular to openly insult millennials now is because at this age, a lot of millennials are now company founders, and they're also in senior leadership. The older half of the millennial generation, many of them are VPs, SVPs. A lot of them are founders and C-level in their own companies. So you can't really get away with it as much. And then also their needs and their innate view and relationship with employment is now more embedded in the global work culture, because they've been around longer and now they have more power. So in terms of motivating performance and work location, the main things I see is that when a millennial or a Gen Zer resists a return to work mandate, they're automatically judged as lazy and selfish and not dedicated to the advancement of their career. And the narrative often says, it's better to be in the office because you have exposure to your coworkers, you're visible, you have access to mentors and leaders, And so that's actually going to make it more likely that you will make more money and get promoted faster. The thing, though, is that basically all millennials who were in the workforce before COVID, they experienced life in the office before COVID. They experienced access to mentors. They experienced access to visibility. And yet, by the numbers, 55% of Gen Zers and 56% of millennials are living paycheck to paycheck. And millennials are the generation in the US most likely to be living below the federal poverty line. So what this means is that they experienced firsthand all the reasons that are being given to them now for why in-office work is superior to working from home, and it didn't pay off for them. So to them, it's an unproven value proposition. That's something that we as leaders of other generations, we need to take seriously, because no matter what you personally believe, somebody's approval of your desires is not a test they need to pass. And it's the leader's responsibility to get the performance out of the people that allows them to deliver their team's success to their business. What I find is that a lot of leaders right now are spending less time trying to win outcomes and spending more time trying to win arguments. It's just a waste of time. It's just adding unnecessary friction to the process of getting that performance out of people. Yeah.
What do you think about AI taking over these jobs? Like what are your thoughts on AI coming into the workplace? And do you feel like it's really going to make a big shift in getting people's desires or harming? What do you feel like there?
I do not yet have a fully formed opinion of what AI will be in the large scale. I think we can see some initial changes. I personally don't have a clear vision of that yet. So I don't really state a lot of opinions about it. But here's what I do know. Regardless of what level AI impacts a certain organization, a human is still going to want to get the life they want from the work they do. And if actual reason or just fear around AI diminishes their belief that they can have a future at a company, they're going to move on. And there's a couple reasons why companies, even those that are investing heavily in AI, should really care about whether or not their people stay or move on. The first is that there's a couple stats in the book, one from Deloitte that really sticks out. It found that in 2022, 90% of all corporate assets were created by humans. And also when you think about, if you're a leader, you think about, okay, of all my business assets, which is my most expensive line item? It's your salary, it's your people. If you say, of all my business assets, which ones conduct the most business critical customer and buyer facing interactions? It's your people. And of all your business assets, which are you most at risk of losing every single day, even when you're not fully aware of that risk? It's your people. So you literally don't have a business without your people. Like products, strategies, they don't have a life force of their own. They are inert objects. They're just boulders at the bottom of a hill until someone comes along and pushes them. Like my favorite analogy that I wrote in the book is like our products, they don't carry themselves to market. Like we carry them to market, right? That's the first reason. The second reason is just the straight up financial business case that underpins desire-based leadership. It costs about 5 to 12 times more to replace one person who has left your company than it does to satisfy one person who's currently at your company. Like an example is if you have somebody who's making $100,000 and in your industry, the cost of replacement on average is 125% of a role's salary. And Forbes and Gallup have both found that 50 to 200% replacement cost is pretty standard, varying on industry. Well, $100,000, 125% replacement cost. That means you're going to spend $125,000 just to get the replacement for that role into the seat on day one. Excuse me. And then once you have them, you have to pay them. So to get them to year one in role, it's going to cost you $225,000 to replace one person. That's the cost of attrition. On the cost of satisfaction side, PayScale, ADP, and Mercer, they together have found that a 3% raise is often found offensive and intolerable by most people. And sadly, that's the most common performance-based increase for exceptional performance across markets today.
Wow.
But they found that a 5% to 10% raise is found to be extremely satisfying and highly engages people in their work and extends their tenure. So let's say you went hog wild and you gave that person who makes $100,000 a 10% raise. That's going to cost you $10,000. So you get to decide, do you want to pay $125,000 to replace one person, or do you want to pay $10,000 to satisfy one person? It's a 12 and a half times price differential. And I ran these numbers for a pretty large organization recently to their C-level. They called me in to talk about this. And they have about 18,500 employees here across the world. So 18,500. And I was, okay, I ran these numbers for them. And basically what it came down to was that if they were going to pay the cost of 12% attrition every year, it was going to cost them $477 million a year, $500 million just to stay at their staffing plan. But if they gave all 18,500 people in the company a 10% raise, it would cost them $277 million. So they would save nearly $250 million by prioritizing employee satisfaction over employee replacement.
What's going on, sales players? It's Jesse here, and I want to introduce you to a genuinely cool product that we just learned about called Evie AI. It is a LinkedIn AI content assistant that was built to enhance your LinkedIn presence, increase your exposure and productivity as a seller. You can create personas, generate ideas, generate comments, craft posts, and 10x your LinkedIn presence. We actually had Joe, the founder, on the show, and he was kind enough to put together a special offer for sales players. There is a link in the show notes with more details. Go check out Evie AI. That's EVY AI.
Listeners, I want you to just think about this, and I think that, you know, we've had Dan Goodman and some other folks on the podcast talking about comp plans, but this is more of a structure of how businesses think about employment. So you're always not thinking of what can I, you know, if I leave my job or if I get fired, you know, the company's going to make some more money because they don't have the payroll. The attrition is a big thing to think about, especially when you're negotiating and seeing like, okay, if I do leave, they're going to have to replace me. There is cost in that.
Yeah, that from the employee's point of view. And then from the leader point of view, let's take it really seriously that this cost can really hobble your profits. And I know we're talking largely to a sales audience here, and I spent a long time within sales organizations, and it's specifically in sales enablement. And one of the things that always moves me so much about sellers, and I appreciate and admire so much about sellers and sales leaders, is just how damn hard you work. Like, yeah, you get the payoff, but you earn it. And you work so hard for every dollar of revenue that comes in. Yet imagine, so start thinking about what it feels like when you start discovering that you sacrifice your time with your family and your peace of mind and your sleep and your weekends to book all this revenue. But on the back end, there are people management processes and attrition costs that are just crapping that money out the back end, just wasting your effort. That doesn't feel good, right? The other thing is this: when I went independent and started consulting, I do GTM consulting and revenue mechanic consulting for organizations. And one of the themes and trends I started realizing was that, revenue leaders, we talk about revenue constantly, but I hardly ever hear revenue leaders talk about profit, which is so wild to me, because revenue minus cost equals profit. Like, businesses don't exist to make revenue. They exist to make profit. And yet, because we live in the world of revenue, and oftentimes because we bring in the money, sales is often catered to more thoroughly than other business units. We don't often think about the fact that the revenue that we're bringing in is not the end of the story for our business. It's an input into the overall financial performance of our business, and cost matters greatly. And so I had some really good mentors, thankfully, before I became a leader, and they drilled into me the fact that your job as a leader is to get the success of your team and be a good steward of your company's financial resources. And even though you're working in the revenue organization, cost is your job. And you need to have a clear perspective on how you're controlling cost. And because people are a company's largest cost, you have to care about people-related cost if you're going to be a responsible leader.
So important. And I think so many people miss that factor of profitability, and there is human capital that really does affect that. Yeah, maybe you did bring in this $100,000 total contract value, but maybe you lost an employee because, some issue happened and that profit's just wiped away.
Yeah, and while you don't see it directly on the revenue balance sheet, right? That's not in our AE scorecard. That's not in our forecast, in our CRO's pipeline. But it's in the overall financial ecosystem of the company. And you could have incredible revenue success, but you could still miss your plan for the year if the costs are out of control. So this is where the importance of motivating employee performance on a basis that matters to the employee actually is a hard business requirement for financial and business success. And if you're going to solve a human motivation problem, you can't do it through operational solutions. You got to do it through human solutions. Yeah.
And Phil, just give us some quick basic guidelines for people to ask questions about how do I find my desire? Like,
sure.
You as an individual, like what are some questions I need to ask myself, and how do I really understand? Yeah, I just want some money, but how do I like really get into it and
sure.
get into these real questions?
So this would be a great chance. I'll walk quickly through the life motivation discovery model. So life is an acronym: lifestyle, income, feelings, employment. Lifestyle. There's two most important questions you can ask yourself. First is, how do I want to spend my time day to day outside of work? So where do I want to spend it? Who do I want to spend it with? What do I want to be doing? That's the first set of questions. The second, it may sound wacky, but my number one all-time most effective motivation discovery question is, describe your couch. And it's super weird, but if you tell me like 5 or 6 pieces of information about the actual couch you have in your home right now, I can pretty much read your heart on what your overall life motivations are and what's going to motivate top performance out of you. So we can come back to that in a second, but that's the lifestyle piece. The income piece, the most important question you can ask yourself is, what do I want to use my money for? It's not how much do I want to make by what time, because making the money is not the point. Using the money to live your life is the point. So you want to ask yourself, what do I want to use the money for? When do I want to use it? What's my relationship with money? And in particular, is my goal just to amass wealth, or is it to have greater peace of mind? Because those are two very different bases of motivation when it comes to money. For feelings, that's about, how do I want my life to make me feel day to day as I'm living it? right? Most humans, we want our life to make us feel mostly good and mostly not bad every day. So this is about personal well-being, right? This is also about, what do I want? What does my family, what do my loved ones want their life to feel like? Because when you're miserable in your job, that's coming home with you to a certain extent. And once your loved ones say, hey, bro, dad, whatever your relationship is to them, you hate your job and it's making my life miserable and I'm not into that, so figure it out. That's a really, really bad sign for your employer. Because you love your loved ones a hell of a lot more than you love your employer. And once they say your job is making my life worse, the countdown clock to their attrition has just sped up like 10 times. And then the last part is the employment, which is, what do I want my job, my career, to do for my life? And this is about professional well-being. So what do I want my current job experience to be like? And how do I want to see it develop? And then also, what's my long-term plan? How do I want my employment to serve my life? And that's a really important phrasing, especially for leaders as well. A lot of leaders, it's easy for us to just kind of sink into the rhythm of thinking that employees exist to serve the success of the company. No. The company exists to serve the desires of the employee and receive the performance that makes the company successful in exchange. So that relationship with employment that people are looking for is, how does employment serve my life rather than how am I expected to serve my employer? That's a really quick walkthrough of the life motivation discovery model.
So love this, and I'm going to have to get the book because I want to know with the type of couch that I have, what you think, what type of pizza and what type of couch are my life motivations. But Phil, this has been an amazing conversation, and how can people connect with you, get the book, and reach out to you?
Sure. So LinkedIn is where I'm most active. So that's where you can find me, connect with me there. I always respond to DMs and comments and stuff. Also, I'm available to teach workshops. I love teaching workshops. I do a lot of internal work for companies as a consultant, and also do a lot of sales kickoffs and other kinds of conference speaking. And then you can buy the book in paperback on Amazon. It's also available in all the typical audiobook areas, and there's an ebook as well, of course.
Awesome. Well, this has been a great conversation. And before we leave, so where's your number one pizza place that's not a chain in New York?
It's called Beeside, and it's in Hell's Kitchen, which is the neighborhood that's just west of the Broadway Theater District. It's like Neapolitan type pizza. It's so delicious. It's so good. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm off to get a slice, and this has been an excellent episode. Thanks again, Phil, for coming on the Sales Players.